Good morning, friends. I feel so blessed to be up here giving a sermon today. In a few months, I'll be heading off to seminary, so here's to hoping that this goes well. I'd love to leave you all thinking, wow, what a wonderful call for this young woman, rather than, wow, thank goodness she is getting professional instruction. As you can imagine, that transition has made me pretty sentimental lately. I've been reflecting on my time here at BPC and the people who have shaped me and the moments that have taught me something about God. Which brings me to our young adult group. Something you should know about our young adult group is that nobody ever seems to be able to leave when they're supposed to. A few weeks ago, after our young adult Bible study, a handful of us were sitting around Oscar's couch. The closing prayer had been said. Everyone was getting ready to go home. Jackets were being put on, shoes were being put on, and then Oscar started brewing tea, which usually means we're all probably going to be there for another hour or two. We would talk about everything under the sun during this tea service. That crazy coworker, our stubborn parents, breakups, makeups, terrible first dates, and deeper things too, like how is God moving through our lives? What did we need prayers for? We would spend 20 minutes drafting the perfect text message, and then the next 20 minutes talking about our life's purpose. Like any epic friendship, at one point these people were complete strangers. We didn't know any of those tiny details that just make someone so precious over time. The way someone laughs, or the story they've told a million times, the phrases they say without realizing it, and just the little things that make someone uniquely themselves. But now I knew their stories, and they know mine, and sitting there on Oscar's couch, surrounded by half-finished mugs of tea, and people who had somehow become dear friends, I found myself wondering, how on earth did this happen? How did a group of strangers become the kind of people who you could laugh with one minute and then pray with the next? How did we all just agree to show up and be in each other's lives? And then I realized that what was happening wasn't strange at all. It was deeply human. In fact, it might be one of the oldest things human beings have ever done. We gather, we tell stories, we share meals, we make space for one another, and over time, strangers become friends. And it's not just in our young adult group. I think we see this longing everywhere. We live in a world where people can order dinner without talking to anyone, have groceries delivered to their front door, and we have more ways than ever to avoid one another. And honestly, there are some advantages to that. If nobody comes over for dinner, nobody sees the dishes in our sink. If I never pick up anyone from the airport, no one will notice how messy my car is. Nobody notices our insecurities, our weird habits, our bad jokes, and all of the unfinished parts of ourselves we'd rather keep safely hidden from view. Connection is risky because the moment we let people in, they might discover the secret we're all hiding. We're flawed. Human beings are so hungry for connection, and we live in a world where we can know hundreds of people and still feel lonely. We live in a culture that encourages us to stay productive, stay distracted, stay numb in order to feel safe. We spend hours talking about work, sports, what Netflix show we're watching, if we caught the game last night, but rarely do we really talk about what's on our hearts or our minds. And what's that about? And if this illustration isn't really doing it for you, think about the exchange. Hey, how are you? Good. How are you? Good. What did we really get from that? I do believe there are times every now and then where you do find yourself in spaces where someone might ask a real question and wait for a real answer. Not the rehearsed answer of, oh, I'm good, it's all good in the hood, but the real answer. You start to feel like maybe for a moment you can take your mask off. Maybe you don't have to be quite so put together or so certain, and you can admit that you're tired or confused or hopeful or scared. And it's so healing because you start talking as humans trying to be. And often I've found that that's when something surprising happens. The thing you thought that was uniquely yours turns out to be shared. We discover that beneath all the carefully curated versions of ourselves, we're really not all that different. We're all trying to make sense of our lives, longing to be loved, carrying disappointments, healing from trauma, searching for meaning. We're all wondering who God is and where we might fit into that story. And look, at some point, I'm sure all of us have trusted the wrong person and been met with egos and walls. But if we're honest, most of the time, I don't think that is what really happens. Most of the time, we're met with a deep kindness and met with far more grace than we would have expected. And it's refreshing to see a human be really true. And I think that's because human beings are a lot more gentle than we give ourselves credit for. When you read the Gospels, Jesus is always completely uninterested in people's performances. He is constantly looking beneath the surface while everyone else is paying attention to status, success, reputation, and appearances. Jesus is paying attention to people. One of my favorite examples happens in Luke chapter 5. One day, as Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, the people were crowded around him, listening for the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets, and he got into one of the boats, one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put it out a little to shore. Then he sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Simon answered, "Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything, but because you said so, I will let down the nets." When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break, so they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man." For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken, and so were James and John and the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." So they pulled their boats up on shore and left everything and followed them. Isn't this just such a human moment? Jesus performs this outstanding miracle, and Peter sees his holiness, and his first response is, "Get away from me." Why? Because he feels inadequate. We spend so much of our lives afraid that if people really saw us, they would leave, or we would get in trouble, like everything is a test and we're constantly failing. We hide our mistakes, doubts, and parts of ourselves that feel messy, unfinished, or unworthy of love. And Peter does the same thing. Standing before Jesus, he suddenly becomes aware of all the reasons he thinks he doesn't belong, and so his first instinct is to create distance. "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." But you know what's interesting? Jesus does not step back. He steps closer. And he says, "Do not be afraid." The miracle of grace is that God sees the whole truth about us and loves us anyway. And I think that that's why friendship can feel so sacred, because every now and then we experience a small version of that in the grace we share with one another. We tell the embarrassing story, we confess a mistake, we share a fear we've been carrying alone, and instead of being rejected, we're met with understanding. Let me tell you, it would have been way safer and easier not to stay for tea at Oscar's. Maybe then I wouldn't have to admit how nervous I am about making friends when I move to New Jersey, or how, while it's exciting and invigorating, I am absolutely terrified. But what I've gained from all those times is real friendship, really being known. And sometimes the things we're most tempted to hide often become the very things that connect us, because the person sitting across from you knows exactly what it's like to be human. Everyone knows what it's like to fail, to doubt, to be afraid, to carry darkness, to feel inadequate, to worry about who they're going to eat lunch with on the first day of school. Human beings love one another not because we are flawless, but because we recognize our own humanity in each other. Our loving God, who sees us completely and still says, "Come, sit down, you belong here." And when we truly believe that, we become free to offer that grace to others. And perhaps that's why Proverbs tells us, just as lotions and fragrance give sensual delight, a sweet friendship refreshes the soul. A sweet friendship refreshes the soul. One of my favorite One of my favorite moments with my roommate began with the words, "I cannot believe I'm telling you this right now." What starts as a confession usually ends with us laughing so hard we can hardly breathe. The story itself doesn't change and the embarrassing thing still happened, but somehow the shame loses its grip when it's spoken aloud in the presence of someone who loves you. There's something comforting about realizing that the thing you were ashamed of is just simply part of being human. We discover that our imperfections are not barriers, but often the bridge. Over the past few years at BPC, I've watched this happen over and over again. I've watched people share burdens they thought they needed to hide, vices they want to quit, fears they hold, times they've dropped the ball, only to find compassion waiting on the other side. I've watched friendship grow between people who on paper have absolutely no reason to know one another. A retired attorney and a high school student, a recent college graduate and someone celebrating their 80th birthday. People from different backgrounds, different generations, different life experiences, and yet somehow we keep finding pieces of ourselves in one another. And the truth is that we've always belonged to one another. When a child is born, someone holds them. When we are grieving, we call someone. When we celebrate, we gather around a table. And when we are lost, we look for a hand to guide us home. Christ has invited us to the same table, and we have agreed to a certain exchange of grace for all things that just make us human. There's a simple truth we long to hear. You are not alone. God is with you. You belong, and because of that, you do not need to be afraid. I don't know what everyone in the room is carrying right now. Maybe it's grief or fear or disappointment, or just maybe a slight undercurrent that everybody in the room might know something you don't, and you just feel a little out of place. Some of you are carrying losses that nobody else in the room even knows about. All of us are experiencing something really unique about this human experience. And yet here we are, showing up, singing together, praying together, and trusting one another with our stories. You know, so many people reached out to me last night and in this coming week about, how are you feeling? Can I offer you prayer? Are you nervous? How's it going? And I told them, you know, I have some nerves, but mostly like I'm excited. I feel good about it. And I promise you, it is not because I know what I'm doing. For all I know, I might be crashing and burning up here. But it doesn't matter because you guys love me. Yep. And I love you guys. Sometimes. Adam, I'm looking at you. So I'm not worried because in this room together, we spend our lives trying to build the kingdom of God. And what if the whole world felt a little bit more like what it feels like in this room? A place where people could be known and cared for, where we could fail and still belong, a place where grace is stronger than fear. Again, I don't know what you're carrying this morning. Maybe you're lonely, maybe you're grieving. But I do know, in my very wise and assuming place as a 26-year-old, that it's probably just part of being human. And my hope for us is that we keep showing up for one another, because maybe that is the small glimpse of the kingdom of heaven. People who love you, accept you, see you, and maybe it's in the friendships and the people who guide you home. And if that's the kingdom of heaven, I don't know about you guys, but I'd stay for tea.